a psychologist and ADHD specialist here with Cindy Goldrich. And Cindy is has a master's in education and is a certified ADHD clinical service provider and teacher trainer, and overall ADHD specialist. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You work with a lot of parents in coaching parents who have children with ADHD, and many of those parents also have ADHD. So I thought today we would focus specifically on a parent who has ADHD, parenting a child with ADHD. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that and ways to support yourself as a parent with ADHD.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. It's such an important topic. So many of the parents that I support who are parenting children with ADHD have either diagnosed or sometimes undiagnosed ADHD. They didn't really realize as they were growing up that the challenges they faced were due to their own ADHD. And it's through having children that they really start to put a lot of the puzzle pieces together. So it's really so important to help adults who have ADHD in their parenting skills, because it's complicated.
I can imagine. And so what are some of the challenges that you hear from these parents?
Oh gosh, anything from how am I supposed to teach my kid to be organized when I have trouble organizing myself, or the recognition that their time management skills, but really at the core of it, a lot of it has to do with their own emotional regulation. Because as you know, emotional regulation is at the core of some of the ADHD challenges. So when you've got a child who has these challenges and is not yet ready to maybe take on all the tools and the strategies to learn how to manage their emotions, it can very easily get out of hand like that, because both the parent and the child are dealing with their own emotional dysregulation in the moment.
I think it's, yeah, I mean, I can certainly see the chaos of having two humans with ADHD trying to work together.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, you know, to begin with, if an adult with ADHD has a child, these are generally traits, I have ADHD, that are not, that we don't like in ourselves. No matter how many times Dr. Hallowell says it's a gift, I have a hard time, you know, recognizing all those symptoms as positive traits. So I wonder if you have a child with ADHD, is it really, you know, as a first step to accept them or accept ourselves?
It absolutely is, but I'm going to say more than that. And because I know Ned Hallowell, and we've had these conversations. Is it a gift? Is it a curse? And all of that. I look at it as a difference with challenges. I don't look at this as a disorder. I look at it as, yeah, there are major challenges. And what we want to do in parenting our children is help them see that challenges just mean, okay, we've got some problems we need to solve, some tools we need to learn, and some strategies we need to gain. And this is my opportunity as the adult to really kind of do my own work and work right along with my child. I want my child to feel like they are not a square peg in a round hole. They're not just, you know, misfits. They just need to learn their best way. And I'm going to do that in supporting the parent and helping the parent recognize those wonderful traits in their child. There's even, in my parent workshop series that I do, there's a specific, I guess, PowerPoint sheet that I show where it shows all of the challenges of having ADHD, right? Like the hyperactivity, the distractiveness, the assertive, you know, the out of control assertiveness sometimes, and all of these different traits. But then we look at how they're positive as well. And we see, how do we get from this place to this place with our children?
Well, to go back a sec, I really liked how you used the phrase opportunity, that ADHD can be an opportunity.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's a gift, but I do think it's a tremendous opportunity, particularly if you're diagnosed as a young adult to begin the process of change and focusing on improving executive functioning, which, by the way, executives are spending thousands and thousands of dollars to learn the same skills.
That's right.
So it is an opportunity, and I think that's a nice way to phrase it. And then, as you said, if we can accept ourselves, it becomes easier to accept a child with the same exact problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think acceptance is really key. Otherwise, you go down a rabbit hole of shaming and blaming, and I don't want you to be like me, and these kind of things.
Right. Can I add one more word to the acceptance, which is compassion?
Compassion, yeah.
I think it's important to have compassion for yourself, to understand that you are whole. You are a good person. You may have your deficits. Listen, I don't have ADHD, but I am geographically challenged. I moved out to Boulder last year. I still use a GPS to get everywhere, right? But I don't have to have that shame because it's not a diagnosis and it's not, all this other stuff. We need to normalize that we're all different. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Let's just help us all get better at what we need to do.
And I think the idea of acceptance can go hand in hand with encouragement.
Yeah.
I was talking with a client yesterday, and he's a little bit on the spectrum, autism spectrum. He's 40 something with kids now, who have, by the way, some of the same challenges with ADHD and things. And he told me his mother would sometimes tell him, should I ground you today? And then I was confused. Why would a mother say that? Well, sometimes kids back in the 80s, kids would come to your house. They wouldn't call, and they would just say, "Hey, is Johnny home?" And instead of putting him in a situation where he had to say no to the kids, he needed a day to decompress, and he needed a day just to relax. And his mother was aware of this, accepted this part of his personality, and set up this little mechanism for him to stay home and not have to, say no to his friends.
Right.
So I think that really shows acceptance of the child where they're at.
I think that's great. The one way I would maybe reframe that is, because I even did this with my kids. If they, I had a rule with them. If you're ever uncomfortable in a situation or you ever really don't want to go, you can call me up and say, "Mom, I've got a really bad stomach ache."
Yeah.
And then it's not like, oh, he got in trouble again, he's punished, right? It's instead,
Yeah, I think the stomach ache is good, and the idea of acceptance. But we do need to encourage different behaviors, and so maybe we can talk about that.
Sure.
Supporting ourselves with ADHD and in getting change from our child.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I work with parents a lot, and it's helpful for them for themselves as well as in their role as parents, is how do you know if you're enabling versus supporting, right? Am I enabling my kid by, letting him get out of a situation or helping him, with his homework or waking him up in the morning or laying his clothes out, all those things, or am I supporting him? And that comes down to, what are the tools you're working on now? Because to me, enabling is doing something for someone else without a plan to help them do it for themselves.
Right.
You may have a plan that, okay, you know what? Next month I'm going to start helping my child wake up on his own, but right now we really need to focus on something else that's bigger going on. So for right now, I'm not going to worry about the fact I'm not going to get frustrated that I keep waking my kid. I'm not going to make him feel bad that why aren't you waking up on your own? I'm just going to do it because I know I've got a plan to deal with it later. And that's going to help reduce my stress. And if I can be calm as the parent, I'm going to calm the whole environment. And that's going to help everyone's emotional regulation.
So you're saying, as a parent, having an idea that this won't be forever, and that the child will begin, and I have a plan to help them do it for themselves.
That's right.
I guess that would reduce the feeling like this is going to go on forever.
Exactly, because parents feel like, oh my God, am I going to wake him forever? No, you're not. But until we work out the when and the how to help make that transition, it's sort of like the baton, the relay race, right? Where you're passing the baton to the next person. You start off very close when you're passing it, and then gradually you're getting further and further away. But we need to do this with a plan, because as a parent, if I am doing it out of my own frustration, you know what, he's 15 years old now, I decided he should be independent, he should do it. There's a reason you've been helping him all these years.
Yeah.
Some of it's your stuff, some of it's his stuff, but let's figure out what's going on and make it work.
Right. And I like that idea, because I think sometimes a lot of parents come in saying, oh my God, he's never going to change.
Right.
I say, I can't imagine these behaviors at 30, so sometimes I tell parents to keep in mind what he's going to be like at 25 or 30, and a lot like the picking the nose and a lot of this stuff that you as a parent are stressed out about just won't be a problem.
Right.
Hopefully.
Well, it's a process. I mean, I have a lot of clients whose children are in their early 20s. And at first they call me kind of sheepishly and say, I really need some support, but my kid's not a kid anymore. Will you still work with me? And as far as I'm concerned, until your child is fully launched, you're actively parenting.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a common trait in my practice is, 20-some early 20s kids that are still struggling and need their parents' support. So let's talk a little bit about that, because kids with ADHD need scaffolding.
Mm-hmm.
And how does a parent know when to provide scaffolding and when it's too much and crossing into enabling?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. So I have a process I go through with parents where first we're going to have to figure out how to really communicate with our child, and then we're going to have to collaborate with them, because I don't know if you really can or if you won't until I understand what's getting in the way with you doing what I would normally expect you to do. In other words, I think we confuse what you talked about executive functions. Executive function skills have nothing to do with your level of intelligence. You could be incredibly intelligent and have weak executive function skills. I always say, like the nutty professor, right?
Right.
So I want to be able to distinguish with the child what is getting in the way of them doing what is expected. What are their concerns? What are their lagging skills? What is it? Is it straight defiance? Generally, I don't think it's straight defiance. I think the defiance is actually the cover-up for very often anxiety or depression. The kid's just pushing off the parents' expectations because it's just more than they can handle. So we need to really parse this out, and we do that by developing a certain kind of relationship and communication with the child where we're understanding their concerns, we're explaining our concerns, and we're saying, okay, how do we get from point A to point B, right? Because I believe in the natural development of the child. I believe that, like you were saying, by the time they're 30, you're imagining they're not going to be doing some of these other quirky things. I do believe that they want to get there. We have to figure out how to help them get there.
And wonderful. I also wonder how a parent with ADHD knows, what is a good task and what are things that they can do with the child and what are things that they could delegate to a partner.
That's
a tough one.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's not easy. I mean, and a lot of these parents are parenting alone, and that's got its other whole complication. And a lot of them, as I'm sure you know, when you're dealing with adults who have ADHD, very often the marital relationship, the partnership can be stressed and strained. So it's not only what can I delegate or what should I delegate, it's what can I delegate? How can I work with my partner? So a lot of what I do, I always tell parents, I don't do couples therapy. I do couples coaching, where we'll talk exactly as you're saying. We'll talk about, well, what is reasonable for this parent to do, and what can the other parent, the co-parent, fill in and support in a way that's not feeling like a resentment that, you're expecting me to do all this stuff that you aren't doing. We have to stay out of that resentment mode, and we have to really be in that planful and gentle and compassionate mode of what are my strengths, what are my challenges, and where do I need your support?
Right. One of the big problems I see is overcommitment with the ADHD parent will overcommit out
Mm-hmm.
of a long history of letting the others down. And so they think, well, if I do this, then then I'll show them that I'm really reliable and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, have you seen that in your clients?
Absolutely. I have a couple that I'm working with that this makes me think of where, the one parent who does have ADHD and just has trouble, she's the one that has to be getting them up in the morning and doing all this stuff because he leaves early for work. And it was a beautiful moment where he was supporting her in sharing what works for him and helping her set up the strategies to use when he's not around. So even though he's not able to physically be there when the kids are getting ready and everything else, they talked about, how he can support the night before and maybe laying out the clothes and setting the alarms and going over the calendar and everything else and helping her know what does she need to do to help these kids get out the door because they're young kids. They're not ready yet to take on some of these responsibilities themselves.
Yeah, I tell the story. My father, I believe, has ADD and has had it growing up, and he took on the responsibility of the driver. And I, looking back, he did a lot of driving, but for him, it was probably immediate, in the moment, and he could, pick up the slack in the family that way. So maybe an ADHD parent has some unique skill or something they actually enjoy to do that
That's
they
right.
volunteer to pick up the slack.
That's right. And sometimes what they can do may not seem functional, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be valued. In other words, maybe this is the parent who, knows how to lighten the mood and knows how to be artistic or can go out there and play ball with the kid or, some of those other really valuable experiences that this child also needs to have. It's not all about getting up, being organized, doing homework.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Cindy. I believe this was helpful for a lot of our clients.
Sure.
Can you tell the participants a little bit about what you're doing now, any projects you're working on, or
Absolutely.
you'll be giving?
I'll tell you a few quick things. First of all, parents should know, and adults, whatever capacity you are, I do have coaches that work with the high school and the college kids because that's not an easy time period. And I do, of course, do parent coaching privately and through my workshops that I've been doing for over 10 years. It's my Common Connected Workshop series. You can find all of that information on my website, which is ptscoaching.com. It stands for Pathways to Success. Some people say it stands for post-traumatic school because getting through school is one of the hardest things for a lot of these kids and parents, by the way. I do have a new book out that I'm happy to say. It's ADHD Executive Function and Behavioral Challenges in the Classroom. It's meant to support all the educators and the professionals that work with these kids. And my other book, which I'm happy to give your audience the introductory chapter to if they email me. My other book is called The 8 Keys to Parenting Children with ADHD. So if anyone is interested in following up with me or getting the first chapter of that book or learning about my programs, they could just email me, info@ptscoaching.com.
Wonderful, and that book is going to be a great resource for teachers. So I'll have to get a few copies and bring them to the IEP meetings with me.
That would be great. I'll just do one little thing, which is to say that I'm proud mama moment. I co-wrote this book with my daughter, who's been a special ed teacher for 5 years. And we work very closely together because I have the whole perspective of what goes on once the kid gets home, and she has the perspective of what's going on at school. And so we really put both of those pieces into the book. So it's been really nice.
Fantastic.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you, Cindy. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and
Absolutely.
look forward to talking with you again.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.